Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Lesson 61, He That Is Without Sin, of International Esoteric and Illuminated Bible Lessons by R. Swinburne Clymer. International Esoteric Bible Lessons prepared for the Sunday Schools of the Church of Divine Illumination. Special Lesson, The Saving of the Nation. St. John chapter 8. Golden Text. He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her. Verse 3. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had brought her in the midst. Verse 4. They say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Verse 5. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? Verse 6. This they said, tempting him, that they might have a cause to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. In the time of Jesus, this was one of the most important questions. So it is today. The scribes and Pharisees were the leading men of the day. They were the men who gave the religion to the people. They dictated to the people as to what to believe and what not to believe. Just as the Orthodox of today, those who claim to follow the Christ, dictate. Scribes and Pharisees condemned those caught in adultery, and they also condemned all those who were known as prostitutes. Like the vast majority of the present day, they were all guilty of having to do with this class of women. It is a terrible indictment of this enlightened century that practically all men, with a few exceptions, are guilty of having to do with this class of women. And what makes this a crime is the very fact, and one that cannot be contradicted, that those men who are the loudest in their condemnation of these women are the very ones who had to do with them. We are supposed to live in a Christian century, a time when the teachings of Jesus are supposed to be followed, and none will contradict me when I say all those who are foremost in condemning the fallen women are called Christians, and they themselves claim to be such. If they were Christians, would they have to do with this class of women? Would they be found with them, or would they be found helping them to a better life? What did Jesus do? Did he condemn the one who had committed adultery? That is the great question. Is there a living man today who has given this subject any thought that will admit that there could be a prostitute if she was not patronized? Then why is there such a thing? Considering that all men of our nation call themselves Christian, there can be but one answer to this, and that is, these men profess to be Christians, to obey the teachings of Jesus, but they have to do with prostitutes, and then they turn, like the wolf in sheep's clothing, and rend her. The nation, all nations, are now at a place in their history when they must take a different stand concerning this question, for unless they do, the nations perish. The time will come, and is not far distant, when natural marriages will be recognized by law of every state. That will mean that man will be judged by the same standard that woman is judged. It will mean that when a woman is accused of wrongdoing, the man guilty will be accused of the same thing, and what is more, the act will be recognized as a legal and binding marriage. I do not condemn legal marriage. I uphold it positively and absolutely, but I also recognize the natural, God-given law that there is a natural, sacred marriage, and that this marriage takes place between man and woman the minute that they know each other. God never recognizes any such thing as illegitimate, for there cannot be any such thing as an illegitimate child. God smiles upon all children with the same smile, for he knows that there can be but one natural, sacred marriage, and that marriage takes place when man knows woman. The time is coming when the state must recognize this fact, and when she will do so. Why should the man be fated and the woman condemned? Are they not before God equal in all things? Women demand women's rights, but she ignores the most sacred of God's laws, and until she demands that woman shall be equally guiltless with man, she can never have equal rights, for it is only that which she determines that she will receive. The church preaches loudly against the white slave trade, forgetting that within her own ranks there is taking place the most awful of white slave trade. Its most respected members patronize the prostitute 1 hour and condemn her the next. Wherein is the difference, whether a man steals a young woman or sells her, or whether he betrays her trust in him and leaves her to her fate? God does not see any difference between these acts, and if one is worse than the other, it is for a man, a so-called Christian, to make an innocent girl believe that he loves her, only to betray and leave her to the tender mercies of the so-called Christian world. Is there a living soul who is foolish enough to believe that either prostitution or the white slave trade could exist for 1 week if the so-called Christian world condemned it? If all men who call themselves Christian would have nothing to do with prostitutes, so-called, how could there be a trade in white slaves? Answer that, ye Christian lawmakers. There should be strict laws. But why put the horse in back of the cart? So long as Christian men demand this class of women just, that long will the white slave trade exist. What did Jesus answer the Orthodox, who themselves were guilty? Verse 7, so when they continued, asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast the stone at her. Was there a stone cast? No. And why? Because in their hearts they knew that every one was guilty, and that is just why men of the present make laws to punish the men who secure the white slave, and says nothing concerning him who uses her and then condemns her and makes her an outcast. There is but one way to save the women of our nation. That way is to make all motherhood sacred, for all motherhood is sacred. There is no hint in nature that motherhood is shameful or in any way disgraceful, and nowhere can it be found where the master condemned the mother. He that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.